Okay.
Okay, the recording started. I'm just going to stop the transcript. Okay, you ready to fire away? Sorry about that. I'm very rude of me, but let's just make sure we capture this for everyone. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. So again, this is a draft document. So what has happened is the workshop took place on the 16th of August. The document you're seeing in front of you is the outcome from the academia side. So academics and researchers sat together. They made a lot of recommendations according to specific questions that were identified. And I'm going to quickly show you the questions so you know where it's coming from. So, and now these recommendations are going to what we call the National Task Team of the Identification of Engineering Work. The National Task Team needs to look at these recommendations, and they need to do some investigation and make a determination whether they are going to accept it or whether they are going to make some, let's call it, well, they need to take back the recommendations that they approve, and those that they don't approve, they need to make other proposals to academia. So, and that's going back to the Dean's Forum only in November. And only after that will we get some kind of a finality in terms of what's happening in the academic space. So just to put your minds at ease, academics will have to register. So you're not doing this journey for nothing. That's the first thing that's important. And that did not come from EXA. So what we said for the workshop, we said EXA kind of wants to be silent, and we want to give academia a chance to really bring their own flavor to the context of the identification of engineering work. So the first question we asked them is, do they, that they asked EXA is teaching and research in engineering work. So we needed to make certain that if we require of academics to register, it means that we will also recognize teaching and research and the evidences from that as evidence for engineering work. That was the first one. Then taking the scope of work into account, does every person need to register? And we'll talk about that. Then how to demonstrate competence if you've never had industry experience. How can a faculty manage capacity constraints if only certain persons can register? Specified category, should we have one, should we not? Does there need to be a pathway towards registration for academics? And then we talked a bit about the qualification pathway from technician, technologist towards professional reg. And then the other one is purely an academic question, so that's not relevant. But these, again, it should say summary of recommendations draft, because it's still a draft. It's going to the Education Committee on the 5th of October for them to see whether they concur, and then we'll send it through to the International Task Team. So first of all, definitely teaching research deemed as academic work. And it means that registration for academics definitely relevant, and all of the institutions agreed on this. So there was literally not one institution that said, you know what, we don't want our academics to be registered. So some additional notes that came through was about who should register. And this is where the crux now comes in and what we still need to do. So this is the work that the National Task Team are going to sit with. They need to start identifying the teaching and research outputs, and the examples that came through were publications in A-listed journals, the NRF ratings, the teaching awards, conference proceedings. I think everything that people in this room that are academics currently do. So even curriculum development initiatives and so forth, and textbook contributions and so on. So that needs to be sussed out. Then they did say that if an academic comes to EXA to register, we need to look at our panels. That was a very strong recommendation, and one that I'm already taking on board. So this one doesn't even need to be deliberated. So we need to make sure that there's a well-balanced panel that understands academia and what those kind of products look like. Then the one thing that came through that was very interesting and that we do want to consider is not for a specified category. Not one of the institutions wanted a specified category for academia, but they did request that we look into the possibility of an engineering discipline. And this is only to accommodate academics or researchers who have no inclination at all to work in industry. So they never want to set foot on a site, never want to do any kind of research that has an industry component to it. So they literally want to stay within academia and never go out there, be a professional engineer, technologist, or technician that actually has the option to do site work. So then they requested that we look into something like, they want it called engineering, teaching and research. It will be purely academic in nature. And obviously that will mean that if EXA looks at this, they need to develop a new kind of a discipline guide. I doubt any of the people in this room are part of that group, because I think most of you do already work in industry as well. But we are going to look into the option of possibly that kind of a discipline for those only wanting to remain in academia and doing research and never setting foot in industry. Then they also requested us to look at who must register, and they again stated very unequivocally that only persons at the working, teaching and assessing at the exit level need to register. That's what we said in any case. But there were questions about people teaching and assessing at the exit level in other specializations, like any kind of a science focus, even computer sciences, ethics and that type of thing, but they don't have a baseline qualification in engineering. Obviously, you cannot register with EXA without that baseline qualification, even if you teach and research at the exit level. So that's what we decided, or that's the recommendation that's coming through. The exit level will be better defined, but it will only be for those who have a baseline qualification in engineering, and then work at the exit level. And there were some additional notes that they wanted clarification on. Again, talk about the discipline, the discipline for engineering, teaching and research. Then this one we spoke of. So the only way for an academic to register if they don't have experience at all is through that additional discipline. And I mean, this is something the task team members were also there, the national task team members, and they have also different idea in terms of how you can actually contribute towards bringing evidence for those specific competencies. So that will come through in the document that they produce on these proposed recommendations. Then just want to see if there's anything that I haven't noted. This is again about the panels. They talked a lot about the panels. They talked about the R2 RA policy document. That's one of the oldest documents that we could lay hands on. It's a late 1990 document that had information in it for academia specifically, but it was taken out and no one knows why. So we're going to re-look that document and see if there's any guidance in there. And then no one in academia was interested in a specified category, so that's not happening. EXA is very happy about that. We don't want a specified category. It's not a global trend. We don't want to bring it into South Africa, so that's not happening. They also did not ask for a pathway towards registration at all. The registration pathways, the academia said very clearly that they themselves will develop plans to show how they're going to work towards registration for the persons in their institutions. And those plans will then ultimately come back to the EXA accreditation panels for EXA to understand what that pathway will look like, and in terms of the time frames for registration for those teaching and assessing at the exit level. And I think that's about it, Phil. The other things I've said in between with the discussion I've had. So I'm going to stop sharing. Again, it's a draft document, so nothing concrete. I don't want to share it with anyone. It's going to EC, and then we'll take it to the national task team. And if there's any movement further on this, I'll keep this group posted.
Right, that was brilliant. Thank you very much. There were some questions about could we get this, and I'm just saying in the chat there that not at the moment. It's work in progress, and it's a draft document, and there's lots of other tweaks and bits and pieces to go. But I think that was incredibly useful for all the academics. I think also what is really important is it highlights, Mike and Michelle, it highlights the importance in this group, I think, to be starting to differentiate between the academic group, which will have very different conversations, the RPL alternative route, which is a very different conversation, and then the standard route with the baseload qualifications, because otherwise what's going to happen is at any point in time in the conversations, there's always going to be sort of 2/3 of the conversation that is not particularly relevant to them, although the overall learning would be good. But Mike, you got a hand up, go.
Yeah, thanks, Phil, and thanks, Franciska. I think that what you've just briefed everyone is very important. But I do agree, Phil, I think that the group needs to be split in two. The academia are one set, and the others are the other group. And you know, to be in sessions like this where we've got limited time, I think it's important that we split the groups at this stage. And the other thing is, Franciska, you talked about the alternate route and base qualifications, and I think it's, you know, that wasn't recorded because the recording only started afterwards. But if you could just repeat what you talked about with the alternate route and the base qualification, because what Phil and Tom have been saying is that through the alternative route, one can do it with, let's say for argument's sake, if you've got 20 years experience and in the engineering sector. And when I talk about the engineering sector, I'm talking about the traffic engineering sector that our MTM Nuke 1 are all involved with and have been for 20 years. So maybe you could just elaborate that so that we've got something on record. Thank you, Phil.
Just before Fran comes in there, Mike, just to remind you that this is uncharted finality at the moment with EXA. It's a new conversation going on with EXA. So there'll be no definitive answer on this because this is a whole new question. There are old policies, as Fran said, that are very, very out of date, that need to be updated, and the reality of South Africa and the reality of the way the world is moving, where RPL and alternative routes are an acceptable form if specialization can be proven and a high degree of work activity over time can show the increasing degrees of responsibility and cross-mapping to a high number of the engineering learning outcomes. As the conversation with you and Tom, a lot of what you were doing yesterday or the day before when you showed me is that your guys are doing the equivalent of in structural engineering, you know, a load takedown or looking at overland flow, or they're doing all sorts of things. So all of the analysis and early concept design and feasibility and all that stuff, you guys do that. The only thing missing is that baseload qualification. So Fran, I'm going to give you a chance to come in and just respond, but I know that you can't give us an answer. So Mike, it is something, as we mentioned, there is no answer at the moment. It is something that is work in progress. But as I mentioned, as we get into the nuances of this very, very unusual collection of participants, I think it's going to make more sense to split out. So we recognise that, Mike, and that will start to happen. But what I wanted to do today across the groups, because it's relevant to everyone, is just get a sense of where everyone is with their career audits and their learning gap analysis, because that's relevant. It doesn't matter, you know, which group you're going to fall into. It is, and I think the alternative route is going to be different to the standard route. So I think there's actually 3 groups, and we need to manage how we split those and how we resource those and things like that. So Fran, do you want to have a quick word there on the alternative route, or is it just too amorphous at the moment for you to be able to comment?
Thanks, Phil. I think at most, obviously, we need to see the specific cases coming through, because that's what an education evaluation on the alternate route is about. There is no generic one recipe fits everybody. So we kind of need to look at what the individual is bringing to the table. So an education evaluation is never about a group. It's always about the individual. So what I meant with the RPL and the qualifications is obviously that you can never, through RPL, obtain a full qualification. That's not possible. And I mean, that's a CHE requirement for EXA. But EXA is currently revising its RPL policy. It is not the R021 full, it's the, I think it's the E17P, if I'm not mistaken. That's the right policy document. It is in revision, so I don't want to say too much. I think the inputs with our conversation that is coming up, Phil, I think that would be very valuable. We don't want to keep people out. This is not about gatekeeping. It's about determining how we can best provide for pathways to bring people into the fold if they have a lot of experience. So I don't want to say more than that. And Phil, I need to jump. I see they've started the other meeting, which should have started at 5. I'm so sorry about that. But let's pick this conversation up. I know Phil and Tom has already started to schedule a meeting with me and my education team to look at it. But it's not a closed door at all. We do need to think about alternate route and how we accommodate people with a lot of experience. It's better to have you on board, bring you into the space, and to assist us. It might be necessary for us to look at each, I want to say, suite of qualifications, but also short courses and type of experience you're bringing in to see how that determines our education evaluation route. With that, Phil, I'm going to jump out, and so sorry, colleagues. I will join you again for a follow-up conversation, but for now, that's as much as I can add. Thanks, Phil.
Thanks, Fran. Okay, that was very useful. I think that was really useful to have you in, and thanks for sharing that. So I think for all the alternative route RPL, the MTN Nook 1 guys, the moral of the story is that there's definitely light at the end of the tunnel, and the door hasn't been closed, but it is not a simple just happen. So you've heard a couple of acronyms there. There's the EP7, the EP17P, I think it is, which is the alternative route. And it looks at something that they refer loosely to QBE, or qualification by experience, and what needs to happen for that. And then there is an R02 document, which is an old document, also looking at the alternative route and RPL and things like that. But as Fran said, they're very out of date. They don't represent really what's best in the interests of the country and of the individuals. And there is definitely a move afoot to recognize experience. And there may be elements of bridging courses that need to happen along the way, which would not be an unusual thing. So, for instance, the quantity surveyors, a young quantity surveyor with a diploma cannot become a registered qualified professional quantity surveyor. They have to do 18 modules, which are essentially business modules, and they are short courses that you do along the way, would add value to what you're doing. But there is no definitive answer on it yet. So Mike, all I can reiterate is that the A team are on it, and you've heard here directly from the head of regulatory services, and we've already hooked in Navashni, who's the head of the education sector. Tom is probably the most experienced person in South Africa, and we've got Johan Pienaar on the case as well, who used to be the registrations manager for 13 years at EXA. So I don't think there's a better team that can be working on it to resolve to come up with a working plan. I think one of the things we've also got with the CTC, Mike, as we were talking about, is that at EXA is their traditional dislike or disbelief or distrust for anything that uses the word simulation, but we've had massive success with it. So Franciska has already alluded to the fact that if we just change the name and we came up with a value add or a project review or a due diligence project or something like that, if we just change the semantics, they are very impressed with our simulation process, the ability to do a simulation process, Mike, which we talked about with Trevor the other night. So those learning activities, those case studies that you guys have got, which is another term that they may accept, is if we immerse your MTM Nook 1 guys in case studies where they will be discussing not necessarily just the highly specific things of measuring volumes and speeds and things like that, but actually looking at what's involved in a bigger project, like a Molotto Road project kind of thing, what's involved in, and then you'd get exposure to all of the learning outcomes which would then, through our technology, you'd be able to show that you were interacting with a mentor or subject matter expert over a certain amount. And if you acquired a number of hours, and because we're shooting for technician or technologist, those learning outcomes do not have to be demonstrated at level E for 12 months. There are allowances for reductions in the degree of responsibility that needs to be demonstrated, and it will be purely based on hours, and that a registered professional is able to say that I was able to have a conversation with Calvin or Wouter or Henk or Trevor or whoever, and they were able to clearly articulate. They were aware of the laws. They were aware of the public participation requirements. They were aware of the environmental impact analysis things, the ESG requirements, the governance and the ethics, and that's what we will be able to do. And all of that will come out of, because remember, at the moment we have got no idea what this box of chocolates looks like. So what the rest of this session, I would suggest what we do is we allow those who are well advanced. I know I saw from when I popped into Trevor's profile, he's sort of 35%. He's probably a bit further along the way. I know Calvin's quite active there. I'm sure some of the other people are. And if you want to start, if you want to take over the screen and share what you're doing, and then we can show. But just before we do that, so if I could ask all of you, and this includes the academic group, and it also includes the SciC group. So Takalani and others, if you want to share what you're doing, or if you have questions, the objective of this session is we've kind of undertaken and committed to Mike that by the end, and Michelle, that by the end of September, which is 2 months away, 2 weeks away, or just over 2 weeks away, under 2 weeks away, we need to have a pretty good understanding of what this box of chocolates really looks like. And so what I'm going to ask is if we could just go through those of you who have got something to share. We're not expecting a finished document, but I want to be able to comment quickly and give you feedback on it, and the others will learn from that. So it's what we call associative learning. And then the other thing is those who may not have started yet, what can we do to help you get started? Or maybe you'll learn from your colleagues over here. But essentially the journey where we want to be able to find out what we've got in the box of chocolates is twofold. The first one is with the normal graduates, with the baseload, the SciC Nook 1 guys, it's relatively simple because most of you are going to be going back 6, 7, 8 years. It's not that long ago. You may write some of that up as TERs. If you're over 10 years, you might write some of it up as a TEO, or training and experience outcome. We'll deal with you exactly, but you guys are going to be writing up TERs rapidly. So that's going to be the process. And what we want to be able to do is, if you go back, let's say 6 years, we want to be able to see what you've been doing over those 6 years. So and what kind of project work, because out of your career experience audit, we're going to then guide you as to how best to structure your TERs. So for anybody that hasn't done this journey before, a TER is an extra requirement, and it essentially stands for a training and experience report. So in order to become professionally, sorry, Cheryl, just to take a quick break. I see a lot of comments coming up. I will get back to your comments there just to confirm that I can see your points coming up. Thank you very much for your engagement there. What we want to do is the exit process looks at a couple of things. One of them is that you have these TERs, training and experience reports. It's a very old form that they've had for many years. And what it really looks at is that you are required, without any gaps in your calendar. So from the day you started engineering related work, if you went off and flipped pizzas for a year, or you went scuba diving somewhere as an instructor, etc., you've got to be able to show, you mustn't miss a gap. You have to be able to show that this was not recorded, but it's your TERs need to follow, like a silkworm from day one right up to the present date. And so what'll happen is in that you will have project names, you will have people that you worked for, you will have the nature of the project, the value of the project, you'll have whatever it is that allows you to start to think about it. And then we can sit with you with Johan and with Tom, and we can say, okay, because the TRs are completed. For anybody that hasn't done this before, the TRs essentially form two or three ways of doing it. Let me give you an example. If you were working on Kusile or Medupi power station, which, if the way things are going, will be sort of 100-year projects, if you're working on one of those projects, it's quite possible that you could do all of your experience on one project, because the variation in learning, the variation in the exposure to multiple outcomes from the early stage inception and things. And remember, you don't only have to be in a design office to be able to do design experience. Many people on site, and this is the argument I'm going to be putting forward with Tom about the MTM Nook 1 people, is that a lot of what you guys do in terms of the analysis and the data recording and the accuracy of the data that Mike was showing us and Trevor was showing us, into my mind, is exactly the same as an engineer doing a load takedown or doing an overland flow or doing a pipeline design. It's the same. It's the same, that inception phase. It's the feasibility. It's looking at the analysis of what are you going to do, because out of that, a product or a project is developed. Because you need to know the vehicle loads, you need to know the way in motion, you need to have all of that stuff, so that a professional engineer can then design the horizontal curves, the vertical curves, the line of sight, all of those braking distances, acceleration lines. That comes out of your work. So I see that as being, it's like a geotechnical survey for a building. It's an essential component. And so we need to work out how we couch that. With EXA, it's all going to be about language and the way we position it. And it's the same with the TR, which I was saying the other night and last week as well. So we will give you a course, but very quickly, when doing TRs, what you're going to be doing, and I see Cheryl's talking about sort of longer than 10 years. So that's where, Cheryl, the recording of that experience over time. And you would have heard from Fran talking about there that engineering projects are going to be really important, and it will be one of the submissions to EXA as well, is to give the academics the possibility to participate in case studies. What we call with ACOM and everybody else, we call them simulations, but it'll probably come down to case studies, and case studies are based on real projects under the auspices of real professionals, and it will give you an opportunity to fill any gaps that EXA may think you have with understanding the nature of project-based activities or design office-based activities. Fran was talking about on-site. Many of you may not have any aspirations to go on-site. You may have aspirations to be involved in some kind of design process in a consultancy versus a construction company. So we need to make sure that your registration gives you the ability to go where you want to go. And that's going to mean we have to cross-map all of your teaching, your research and publication, your teaching and tuition, et cetera, align that. But the RPL guys, what is going to be important is you're going to write up eventually TERs, you're going to write up a TO. The first thing is, and this is not absolutely 100% the way it will be, because EXA may require slightly different things. But in the current policies, you will write up something called a TEO, which is a bigger, it's a higher level and not as much detail as a TER. And what the TEO will do is, depending on how many years back they want you to record and show evidence of increasing levels of responsibility. But the TEO will start, let's just say 22 years ago, just for a number. And it will record, let's say for 12 years, it will record at a high level. And that's what the career experience audit is all about, is to see how you record 4, 5, 6, 10, 15, 20 projects that you worked on, what your responsibility was, what was the nature of the project. And then that's where we need to come in and couch the wording so that we give it a high degree of analysis, of conceptual understanding, of data, data analysis, understanding the environment, understanding basic physics and engineering principles and things. So we need to be careful of how the wording. And then let's say if your total experience is 22 years, they may let us get away with a 10-year TER gap. And so 12 years will be, I'm assuming, something reasonable, which would be what we call TEOs. And then also during that period, if you went on any specific training courses. So another thing really important to think back is all of the training that you might have done on instrumentation, on data analytics, on TMH7, and all of these things that you've done over time. This is the time to haul out all those old certificates or look for them somewhere, because this is going to fulfill what's known as your TES, or your training and experience summary. That's really important. Exactly the same for the academics. If you've gone on conferences, courses, seminars, if you've published books, if you've published chapters, if you've published papers, peer-reviewed, brilliant, your NRF status, all of that stuff, all essential in your, what we would call your data room. So for all of you, standard route, RPL or alternative route, academic route, my request to you is to start to build what we call a data room, and have a place where you've got all of these bits and pieces. So for the alternative route guys, you're going to have those first sort of years of how you gathered and went. And because you weren't coming with a baseload qualification, you've probably come from a sort of a grassroots up point of view, and there's absolutely no problem with that at all. But you just need to be careful how we write that, because what you do want to do with EXA is you want to show that your employer and your clients, who are maybe professionals and are, you know, names like it could be Robex or ACOM or Zutari or whoever it is, they were happy for you to work on their projects with who you are as an individual, because what that does is it demonstrates an increasing levels of accountability, responsibility, that professionals were trusting your input, your advice, etc. It's all part of creating the environment that people will be happy to say, you know what, you do behave like a professional, you've done so for a long time, etc. Let's look at how we now mesh this into slight amendments and tweaks to the policies and procedures and things like that. But you'll get to a point where you're going to need to get into the formality of a TER, or a training and experience report. And that we'll in one of the upcoming sessions, we'll share what a TER looks like with you, or you can download them from the EXA website, and I can certainly put it into the chats. We'll actually upload it into CHQ, so it's a common document. You can all go and have a look at it. What the TER essentially is they're limited to sort of 4,000 words. And this is where I was saying there's 3 types of TERs in my experience over the years. The one is, if you've worked on a single major project, you can write up one TER, but what you would do is you would show how on that one project you covered all of the learning outcomes over time, and how your degrees of responsibility increased on sort of annual processes and things. So it's like an overarching TER, one project only, and how you write it up. Now, very often EXA don't like that. They want more detail. So what you might do is you might have an overarching, like a master TER, and then you refer to TER2, TER3, TER4 for different periods. And those periods are the indicator for the different period is not a calendar period necessarily. It could be a calendar period, but more importantly, it's probably a period where you took on an additional role of responsibility or accountability. So with your TERs and your timeline, there are 2 indicators that EXA will be looking at, and then we will be trying to guide you on as well. One is just purely an amount of time, because that is an indicator of experience gained. But what's really important is if you're flatlining over 4 or 5 years, and there's no growth in your career, no growth in your responsibility, etc., etc., you're just doing the same sort of thing over and over, you don't want to have that appearing in your submission. So we've got to make sure that there are no periods, unless it was your very early stages. As you've got more senior, and as you guys get involved in these really complicated projects that Mike was showing, Mike did a fantastic presentation, I think it was yesterday or the day before, showing us what MTM work does. And it gives you a whole new appreciation for even traffic cops, and understanding the complexity of of what actually goes into the science and the engineering behind all this equipment and the monitoring and the data capturing and things like that. So that's the thing. And then the other one is, if you, like the MTM Nook 1 guys, is you haven't worked on one project over a long time. You've worked on many projects. So that's another way that you're going to be doing multiple TERs, and it's going to be single project based. And what you want to be able to do is, in the degrees of responsibility from A up to E, where A is where you are simply observing the work. You are just part of a team, and you are at the very early stages, you're just observing. And then you're going to go and you're going to start to slowly participate, in a team, and then you'll actually be contributing into the team. And ultimately, you're going to get to a thing, where you're actually performing the work by yourself. And that's an important thing, Mike, for us to be able to validate in the MTM business model with your clients, that which of your guys are, and I know that they're all at the top of the game, and they're probably internationally at the top of the game in terms of the very specialized work that you do. We need to be able to show that at the top of the game, where they are putting the report together, or they are putting something together for your business and your business's, the brand of your business, and the credibility that your business has in the marketplace, is that it's been performed. It's been done and at a level of performance by one of your some of your people, and that your clients are accepting of those things. So that's going to be important. So MTM Nook 1 guys, your journey is probably going to be multiple TERs, especially, and it's probably going to be going back 10 years. So that's what the career experience audit plan, that whole big Excel spreadsheet, is, just to gather your thoughts. And I'm going to ask, and I'm going to let anybody who would like to share your thoughts with us, to show us what you're doing, so we can all see what you've done, and we can advise and guide you on that, and everyone can benefit from that. And then the next phase from that will be then taking that learning and looking at whether you're going for technician or technologist, and we'll get more guidance on that. As Tom was saying, if we go the technologist route, it may open the door. It's a bit harder because of the gap in educational, the baseload qualification, but it does open the door for a specialization category. I'm not sure what EXA are going to say about that. If we go the technician route, which is the lower level, it means that you need to have exposure across all 11 outcomes, and that's going to be really important. Similar with the academics. Exactly what is the journey, depending on what academics have done, what project works they've done, what can be identified as actual project work in the eyes of EXA, and what would be identified as academic project support, or curriculum development, and tuition and learning, and technology-based tuition, and all the things that academics do. And so it'll probably fall into those camps, as Fran very, very elegantly expressed. But the journey for the MTM Nook 1 guys is that you're going to start to write up your TERs quite soon, because that's where Johan will come into his own, and we'll have sessions. And that's why I'm talking to Mike. If we split the groups, the SciC Nook 1 guys is a lot easier. Because we're recording stuff. There's no questions about the baseload qualification, but the writing up is going to be quite important. And then the process will you'll get your 10 years written up. You'll have your other 12 years, which will be in a TEO, which will be very high level. So in 2000 or whatever it was, my first job was on this. This was the client, this was the project, this was my responsibility, this is the sort of learning activities, kind of low level kind of stuff, but it's recording that you were in the engineering space, you weren't, life-saving or something like that. And so there's a track record. What will be really good is that at each of those periods, if you were working with MTN, great. If you weren't working with MTN, if we can get maybe some sort of sign-off from your employer at that time, I think that all goes to build the credibility that you really were working in engineering, you really were working on those real projects. So, things like in your data room, you might have an old photograph of a site. You may have posed, for something that was going on. just gather that stuff, gather your data room. We're not sure what level of intensity is going to be required, but all of it's going to be very useful. If you've got old reports, if you were included in minutes of project reviews, or client closeout reports and things, anything that you've got that would be useful for the data room, start gathering your data room. And then you're going to go into the TR spaces. So for the SciC Nook 1 guys, Jonathan and Takalani and the rest of them in the SciC Nook 1, and even some of the guys in MTM Nook 1, where you've got the baseload qualification, what we need to do with you is you're probably not going to have to go back your full length of experience. You can start just getting straight into the TER space. If you've got longer than 10 years, you're going to do it. Those early years you're going to do with the TEO, just to gather that, 1 page. Your TEO may just be 1 page of those highlights of those years, but you're going to start to get into the TER space where you write those up, and that's where we'll come and we'll drive those sessions with you as well. So I'm gonna before we go into demoing, I'm gonna put over to the floor to cover any questions, if anybody has anything that they specifically want to ask on what I've said. And then I'm going to ask those of you who have made some progress, if you could share what you've done so that we could see what you've done. We can make sure that you're going in the right direction, and the others can learn from what you've done. Very often the pioneers that get going first are instrumental in motivating those who've just been struggling with time, and it gives them a kind of a way, that's how we do it, because otherwise it's Tom and Phil talking the whole time. So before we get going, and I'm going to be thinking specifically about maybe Calvin or Trevor, who I know have been making progress there, but that doesn't mean that no one else has made progress. So if they're happy to share what they've got. But let's just get to questions. Are there any questions from any of the groupings on what I've said so far, or what Fran said? No questions. I hope that doesn't mean you're all left the session, but that's fine. Okay, that's good. If there are no questions, that's great. Okay, so I'm going to ask for volunteers first, or else I'm going to just go through the names that I can see. And let's just quickly look at Michelle's career. I was going to looking at Cheryl's questions here. Today's feedback from Fran has solidified the academic project selection. So this for me is just beginning. Career experience spreadsheet is rather smart to a CV, but last column is the biz, which connects to the gap analysis. So I feel I can focus on my academic for all the relevant years now as academic. Yes, okay. So Cheryl, any other questions on there? I think what is coming up in another conversation I had with Fran as well, and a conversation with the Professor Marianne van der Skuren, who, as you know, is the Deputy Dean of Transportation and Built Environment at UCT, is that any academic projects that you were, and any academic work that you think is could satisfy some of X's requirements from a project kind of point of view, really worth just gathering that stuff. So if there aren't any questions, I'm going to ask initially for volunteers. Is there anybody that would like to volunteer to show it? And you can be from any of the nooks at all, or can I start picking on 1 or 2 people? Any volunteers here? Don't be shy.
Yeah, for trivia, I'll share if you would like me to.
I'd love you to share, Trevor. Well done. Thank you.
Okay, and we share. I don't know, can you see my screen yet?
We can see your screen. It looks like you've done a very good job. That looks,
yeah,
that
guys,
looks
please, it's just a very high level, it's very hard, because I'm totally aware that the people that I work with are in this group and know exactly what I do. But starting, I don't know if you want me to run through it, Phil, or not.
Yes, I do. I'd like you to run through it, because what I'd like us to do is just test whether we think. Remember, this is not about training the guys in the group. What it is about is it's looking at how we extract from here, and then we cross a line. And so as you go through it, I'll try and help you where we'll be able to use this to cross map into the learning gap areas. So, okay. So take us through it. We've got time, and I'm hoping that other people will get value out of this, because you've done a great job, Trevor. So well done.
Okay, so just to kick off, started in 2002. cross traffic monitoring, and that's where I've been ever since. So throughout the career, although I've separated by year, there's always different projects that come on per year, and so it's quite tricky. But I'll get started. So when I first started, I was involved in a very low level, entry level job, just helping out in construction on the side of the road, even to the point of just flagging and being there, learning the basics of construction. And within this year, we obviously learned a lot, but it wasn't just construction. I mean, it was everything to do with the company. But that's the start of the career. So I don't know if can I carry on?
Trevor, yeah, so I think there's already relevant things because you're bringing in things like safety, which is very much one of the people are going to be interested to see that you understand health and occupational safety. So those are things. And just to also comment on your point, is that you don't finish projects by calendar month kind of thing. So there's a good example is if you map your years like you're doing over here, one project may cover 3 or 4 years, which is fine. And then you would write up a TER for that project, and you would cover the timeline from year 1 to year 4. So that's what I can see from here is you don't write up TERs because your projects span years, and what will happen over 4 years is your degree of responsibility will increase. So in that instance, you'll use the project, you'll do a project-based TER, and you will show that in year 1, this was your level of responsibility, and these are the typical activities that you did. And then in the same TR, you'll say in year 2, on the same project, your degree of responsibility increased. That's going to be a better way of sort of managing those things in these, especially in multi-year projects. But otherwise, continue, please.
Yeah, so the following year, within these first 2 years, I mean, we learned a lot basically on the road, from cutting loops to pizzas to weigh motion sites, the asphalt. So everything that happens on a construction site, we learned within the first years of employment. But just moving on, and this is where probably the majority of the staff in NUC 1 are involved in is the actual data that we validate, the integrity of the data. And so that's when I started, and that was a good couple of years ago that I was involved with the validation, and I was doing the data for a good probably 3 years. So I'm with you again on it's probably the same comment where when we would draw up a TR, it would be over this period.
Yes. The other thing, Trevor, just important to point out is EXA outcome 4 is managing engineering projects. So although it was done some time ago, what you want to do is you're going to weave into your story that important aspect of outcome 4, which is managing engineering projects, because you've got great site experience, which very often academics don't get that opportunity, and certainly people in a design office don't get that experience. So that even though they were early years, we'll couch that and don't use words like we won't use words like it was very basic, etc. We'll just say that you were performing at level A. So you were doing it, under a lot of supervision, or you were participating, and we'll just write it in the words that EXA is expecting to see. So, but this is a great document because this gives us a lot of things to see your journey of progression. So carry on.
Yeah. So then after that, we actually set up a team that went out. With the actual construction team, where we would actually go out and to the weigh motion sites. And wherever there was a bending plate, we would set up and close the lane off, and then actually survey the road 50 meters upstream and then 30 meters downstream with a proper dumpy level, and take recordings. I mean, so that we did that. I did that for probably a year or so. Then when it comes
so that's a relevant thing as well, because the assumption is normally that only sort of someone who's been gone through a university thing. Not the average oak in the street doesn't know how to set up a dumpy level or a theodolite. You can
For
take
sure,
poison
yeah.
on that fact. So so these things where you are using instrumentation of an engineering or scientific basis, highlight those in your discussions, because that shows that you're performing the functions on a construction site of using the tools of the trade. So that's good that you have that.
Excellent, man. Okay. And then, I mean, moving on to VLM surveys, which I put this year, only 2008, but we've basically, my whole career has been doing VLM surveys at different places, and from dealing with the client right to the end of the final product. So I've just put it down as a 1-year thing because I didn't really know how to document it.
If it's a unique, but how far into your long career? So this might still come under a TEO. It might just be well written under a TEO because you've got a couple of years ahead to write up in TERs. But certainly you've got some great background to have quite a compelling TEO written up to show that you were certainly being immersed in the site side of engineering, but also quite a lot in the analysis side of early stage of analysis of which eventually produced an engineering product. So I'm excited to see your TEOs. If we write it well, is a strong track record. Carry on.
Okay, then great. And then started where things got a bit more interesting when we would introduce the speed calming side of things we started with the simulator, then moved on to the fixed camera sites, and then ultimately the average speed over distance. And that's what we've been doing since, I think I've got it to 2009, probably even earlier than that. But that's where a lot of work has gone into this, site installations, the gantries, the camera housings. There's a whole whack that from we can go on for quite a while explaining what we do here, but there's a lot of civil related work, a lot of electronic related work, a lot of stuff that computer related work that's gone into this, and this continues. It's from 2009 to date, and it's hard to try and summarize it in one bulletin.
Yeah. No, but that's what this is for, because it gets your mind together, and then we can look at how best to actually capture that in TERs, and if it's a particular activity that you do, if it's with multiple clients, we have to think about that. If it's with a single client, we might be able to capture it over a time-based thing, showing the increase in degrees of responsibility. And I think what's important also, just to draw everybody's attention to, is that because you've got years of experience, what is really going to be important in terms of the current policies, which is mainly written around people that have got the kind of the tertiary education route, is there are word limits. So you'll just get deferred if you send in 20 years of history written up beautifully, because they won't read it. They're very busy people, and some of them are not as qualified as they could be. There are problems, and that's part of what X is trying to resolve. Is some of the committees and things are questionable in terms of their understanding of engineering, etc. That's a whole new conversation. So what is important, Trev, from looking at what you're doing, is don't get caught up in in identifying lots of words like gantries, cameras, housing and civils, etc. Capture that more as a high impact sentence, because what you want to be doing is showing that there was a lot of thinking involved, there was a lot of analysis, there was responsibility, there was understanding engineering principles involved. So one of the tricks of a really good TER, I've come to understand over the years, it's about 180 years since I did mine, but when I see some of the candidates that we work with, who are really good and get through the whole registration process. And this is a comment for all of those that are going the standard route, and it'll be identical for the academics, although there will be nuances, etc. Is when you write up your reports, do this, because what Trevor's done here is brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant. It's focused his mind on his journey, and he's put a lot of work and effort into this, which will now be invaluable in your cross mapping into your learning gaps and those sort of kinds of things. I'm already seeing a lot of areas over here. You can start aligning these things to the competency indicators and to the range statements. But what is going to be important is the ability to synthesize your journey, because you've got lots of experience and you've only got 4,000 words. Yeah. So you've got to trim these things down, because ultimately what will happen with your TEOs, which is your long history, and then the very detailed last 10 years maybe. And for those of you with the traditional route, Takalani and Jonathan, it might be your last 6 years or last 5 years or whatever. You're going to summarize that, and then you're going to support that with the TES, which is a training and experience summary. So all of your training courses, all your conferences, all your certificates, everything that you've ever got from anybody that is work related. So you're going to capture those, and then you're going to do what's known as an ER, or an engineering report, and that way you're going to write that up as a thing. So Trevor and Calvin and Vota and Henk and all the rest of the guys in MT and Nook One, apologies, I'm using the same names over and over, but what you're going to eventually end up doing is you're going to be summarizing all of your stuff, and you're going to write up an ER, an engineering report. And your ER is the principal document that they will do your interview with, your professional interview. So all of this, it leads up to a point where you're going to choose a project, or you might have a couple of projects, but they will be your most recent, most senior roles. Okay. And you're going to write about that. And that's what we're going to look at in terms of your box, your own personal box of chocolates. Where do we think we need to complement or supplement some of your exposure? Is it on the ethics and governance side? Is it on the procurement side? Is it on the sound engineering judgment? You know, is it managing construction projects? Is it the communication space where you've got multidisciplinary projects, et cetera, et cetera? So we will look at that cross mapping, and that's where the simulations or the case studies will come in and play a brilliant role. But Trev, what you're going to need to do out of this is, as you get on, is you're going to need to start to think, okay, that was the project that I can probably write up the best in the form of a project report, showing, you know, the problems that we were out to solve, how my role in solving those problems, the role I played, because very important when you're writing up TRs and these things is they don't want to hear words like we were in a team that did this, because they can't place responsibility or accountability on the we, and our team did this, etc., etc. Even if it was magnanimous stuff, they can't position you. So TRs and engineering reports are very much first person. You write, I did this, and then the words in the specification document, which is actually in CHQ, you can go into it, which is the document on the competencies framework from EXA, if you use the wording, which is very similar to the EXA wording, they then understand that. It's that old thing that my dad always used to say to me at school and university kind of thing. If I failed something, he'd say, but did you read the question? So the whole thing is give the examiners or the assessment committees the easiest way of giving you ticks and points, because you are talking their talk. Don't use any additional language. Don't use fluffy language. Whatever you do, don't use padding. You just write it the way it is. You summarize it, and all you have to do is demonstrate that you were addressing the particular learning outcome. The competency indicators and the range statement will give you clues as to what sort of words you can try to align to, and then make sure that you explain to them that you were doing it, and then you identify at what level. Was it at A, B, C, D, E? And then you don't say it A, B, C, D, E. You use the words like I was participating in a team. My role in this team was, and you tell them what you participated. If you contributed to the end product, you say I contributed to the end result, and my contribution was made up of the following, so that they can identify your activity and role. And then eventually you're going to be saying, you know, I performed this work unsupervised. I handed over to the client. I did the presentation to the tender committee. I did whatever. So you show those increasing graduations in the way you are doing the work. Trevor, sorry, carry on.
Okay, so you're from there. Basically, we were awarded one contract, and it was to update the freight data bank, and that was a whole project on its own. But yeah, I won't go into too much detail there. The next project we had, or the next part of my career, we rolled out. So once we had got from 2009, once we had installed and got the average speed of assistance distance system up and running, we then started to roll it out to different municipalities. So we rolled it out to like Mthatha, Pongola, Lindian, different municipalities, and then we were involved in a couple of different things, but mainly for data data collection and then revenue and the back office side of things. Moving on.
That's great. I tell you what, I'm just looking at the time. I didn't even realize the time going here.
Yeah.
Trevor, I think you've done a great job. Have you converted this yet to your learning gap analysis, or are you waiting for assistance on that?
I'm still trying to figure out how to pull this across onto the gap analysis.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay, that's what I thought would happen, and I think that's the right place to stop over here. So Trev, that's a great job. I just want to give anybody else an opportunity. Is there anybody else that wants to show Calvin or Michelle or anybody else that's done something similar to Trevor here that you want to share with us? Calvin, go.
How's it, Phil?
How's it?
I'll share it now.
I see we're going to be slightly over time. I don't have a time stop, so if anybody else wants to stay, we can continue a bit. I just want to just check while Calvin's getting them sorted out. Have any of the academics given this a go, or are you waiting for clarity from EXA, or have some of the academics sort of started to write up your experience in terms of engineering related projects that we could possibly use for EXA? Are there any of the academics that would like to share? Cheryl, maybe you? I'm meeting from the phone. I don't know how to show from that. Okay. Cheryl said she can't do it because she's on her phone. Yeah. Okay. Okay. So Calvin, if I can ask you, because you've obviously done a great job as well, could you go through this relatively briefly, and then just to see if anybody, I've not said as I need more clarity, academic. Okay, so Bashingi's saying he needs more clarity on the academic group. That's fully understood. There's a whole team working on that. Okay, Calvin, go. Just give yourself a few minutes on this. Take us through it.
Okay, so I've done mine slightly differently to Trevor's. Each year I have listed the projects I was involved in. I don't know if you guys can see here on the left.
Yeah, we can see. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, and then I put tabs for each project, just so that you guys can get a overview of each one. So for fixed monitoring sites is explanations, and the TMH3 qualification here.
Okay, I think this is going to be hugely useful for your data room, that you've made those detailed tabs. So once again, similar comment is going to be that you've got those vehicle load mass surveys, and it goes over multi-years. So we'll probably write up a TR that does that, and then the various different clients that you do that, and then your increasing responsibilities. But I like the idea of your little data rooms with the tabs, showing the level of analysis underneath that. Because you see, in a skeptical assessor, if you needed to have, I mean, you're going to submit to something that's going to be written up as well as we can. But there's going to be no harm in going to any particular interview with your own data room with you and being able to show people that. And I think it's one of the things, if I look at, and the conversation that I had with Mike and Tom the other night, is it's one of the important things in the acceptance of the alternative route, the RPL route, is we must make allowance for assessors to be able to, or there must be part of the process that I'm going to be promoting, is to show a data room of evidence collection over time. So part of the RPL route should be to be able to show evidence. And I think that's quite powerful that you've done that. So well done.
Okay, thanks. Do you want me to carry on, or?
Yeah, just carry on just to the end. Let's just see what you're getting towards the end, where you're going to, because this is your early stages. So what years were these? Okay, so this is getting to more recent.
So
over here. Okay.
17, there's a lot more projects. Most of them are the same ones from the beginning, but
okay,
obviously got involved more and more. And then at the end here, I did put the levels of
degrees of responsibility. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Well, that's useful. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So now what's going to have to happen is that a registered professional, Mike, or one of these other, Robin Bruces or the Basils or the Robs or whatever those guys, we're going to need them to sign off as you get into the TRs. We're going to need to get them to sign off that they validate that you were, because obviously what very often happens is people sometimes, they do two things, interestingly enough. They completely undersell themselves and they think they were operating at a lower level. And so they're putting themselves at a B or C, where their manager or their supervisor will say, no, you were full contributor to this project. You're at a level D for sure. So it needs that third-party professional validation to say that you're going to do that. But it's great that you've taken a personal stab at it. I see Mike's got a hand up. Go, Mike.
Yeah, Phil, the only problem that we sit with, you say that one of them need to sign it off. And if I take, for example, Basil Enoch, who's a director of our company and would ultimately be responsible for Calvin during this career path, is one of the candidates on NTM Nuke 1. And he's not a registered, he's wanting to get registered, but is he able to sign off on Calvin's work? Because
no.
For me to do it as a professional, I would be the only one in the company that can sign off everybody in NTM Nuke 1's career path.
So at present, the EXA is very strict on the validation of your degree of responsibility and the assessment of if you're doing it at the right level. And so someone at the same level cannot. So you always have to have someone above you in the category above you. So if you get to engineer level, for instance, you can be signed off by an engineer. But if you're a technician, you'd need to be signed off by a technologist. If you're a technologist, it needs to be signed off by an engineer. So what we would need to look at is they certainly coming the alternative route. They would, I don't think, irrespective, because what we're asking for them is to, in the first instance, just recognize the RPL. They are not going to recognize that as already de facto being a responsible person or a professional person signing it off. Now, they could be, in terms of your company, the designated responsible person in terms of the act. But I think what we do need to do is look at your clients. If possibly there was a professional within the clients, or Mike, it's just going to be a busy day signing, and we just have to point that's one of the realities of this particular application.
Yeah, Phil, we'll cross that bridge when the time comes. I think that it's just nice to know how it's going to work, because
I can almost guarantee you they won't accept an unregistered person signing off as another unregistered person. I think that would be stretching the and that's nothing to say you know how competent Basil is. It just in terms of the policies and the law at this moment, they would expect it to be someone who's gone through the hoops. It might be a bit anal, but that's the way it is at the moment. So Cheryl's saying, I'm happy to share mine after today's selecting experiences with outside of lecturing and then to break those down to memorable experiences. I can promise that. Okay, so Cheryl's on track. Adeji saying from the academic route, I would like to know if reporting research work using the same system as presented today. For example, my explicit contribution research project like performance analysis of my concerns about the issue of climate related to academic, just my thought. Yeah, so I think for the academics, you're not going to do it exactly as Trevor and Calvin are doing it, but you're going to just use your version of doing that. I think the important thing is to pull out in the value propositions of the academics' journey in life in terms of, you know, is it research and publishing? Is it tuition and learning? Is it curriculum development? Is it what types of publishing? You know, was it books, book chapters, articles, peer-reviewed articles, all of those sort of kind of things? Have there been any research projects where you've worked with an MTN kind of organization where you've had visits to site, where you've participated in the gathering and the research of stuff? I think that would be worthwhile. It's not it's quite an unusual thing to try and get this sort of map. So if my suggestion for all the academics is just think where you've done something that you think you could get the benefit of in terms of it being seen as an engineering activity, all under the auspices of the academic world, but it could be maybe fleshed out in a little bit more detail. But I think what's going to be important is with the academic group, when we split it, is to get that more involved with Tom and Franciska and the academic people that are looking at. So I can't give you a huge advice at the moment because there is a real group looking at that. But certainly on the MTN Nook 1 guys, Mike, what options are there for other people to sign up from your clients other than you maybe?
Phil, I don't mind signing off on all of MTN Nuke 1. I don't mind doing that. The only problem is signing off on two kids that are within MTN Nuke 1. That's where they might see nepotism or something involved. So
I think we can manage that very easily, because looking at what Trevor and Calvin have done, it's not I don't think that's something we can manage that within the ethics of the whole process. I personally don't have a problem with that. And I think we just manage that with sensitivity, and your point is relevant. But I see Cheryl's got a hand up. Sorry, Cheryl, I missed that earlier. Go.
Well, as I think I've been saying this for about 2 weeks now, the biggest challenge, which Franciska addressed earlier, was as a long-term academic, identifying projects that will, do the necessary. And today, hour ago, I realized many institutions have new qualifications. So staff would have been part of, the curriculation of those since the conception of GAs, graduate attributes. I'm assuming some don't know what that is. Anyway, I mean, we're being measured as people now against that, right? So awesome for engineers. So in some subjects, particularly ethics, engineering society, like some programs, many programs have subjects like that. The preference is for to have, rather than have an academic, but to actually have an engineer, a real live one, spearhead that. But typically, engineers need academic mentors to guide them so that, it's delivered correctly, and the crosses and the O's and things like that. And I had an experience like that, and I find it interesting because we were talking about who signs off on it. And I was thinking about that experience, and I think that it was a very meaty experience, and I might be able to tap it as a as an experience because we had a lovely gentleman from Zatari who utilized all the people in the company to develop case studies, and the students interviewed them. And they utilized it against what was a GA10, professionalism. And it was a very rich experience, and it only happened once, unfortunately. And I was the academic mentor to this lovely professional gentleman. So it was like a case of role reversal. And so I was wondering to myself, you know, in that case, do I get the person I mentored to sign off on the experience? I don't know, but it, you know, there's something there. You know,
Cheryl,
because
I think that sounds like you've got those sort of things. I think you know, I can see Tom's, thank goodness Tom's joined. He's hopefully reached Richards Bay safely, and I'm going to give Tom a chance to come in because Tom's really the expert here. But I think those things where you have special learning events, let's call them, there's going to be, in your data room, you will not go wrong by capturing those learning moments. I think I would really urge you to write that up. And there's nothing wrong because you're going back into industry. Even if you know you were mentoring someone and they're now signing off for you, that's fine because they're in a different world. They're possibly a registered professional in their business role. And I think that what's important is because all you're looking for, Mike, and to everyone else, all we're looking for in the TRs and all of these things is that there's validation that someone who has gone through the rigor of professional registration and has been audited and really understands the roles and responsibilities and the accountability of being a professional, has looked at your work, can validate or verify that you were actually involved in those projects. They have first-hand knowledge that you were on those projects, and they're prepared to put their professional reputation on the line by not perjuring themselves and signing that you were there. That's all the assessors want to see, that there's a third party that has got the necessary recognition and that they signed off. So I think that's good. I think that Tom's got a hand up. Cheryl, unless you got something else, I'd like to give Tom a chance.
No, I talk enough as it is. Thank you.
No, you're always welcome. Can you put your hand down and let's get Uncle Tom into the room. Uncle Tom.
So Phil, I'm just responding to Mike's question earlier. The supervisor can sign a TER or a TOR if they are not registered, because that supervisor is merely approving that the record of what they have done is a true reflection of their work. Where you need registered people is the referees. That's not negotiable. So in Mike's MTM NUC 1 case, Basil could sign off Trevor and Calvin and all of them below him, but obviously he could not sign off his own. So I would say that Basil, Henk, maybe Emma and Vota, Mike would have to sign off, except in Emma's case, because she's doing a PRN route, Henk would sign off as her immediate supervisor, and then we would have to get either client PRN referees or for the others PR Tech Eng or PR Technique. But I've just checked with Chris Maynard, who is an assessor at EXA, and EXA understands that you can't expect the supervisor to be registered. Yes, they want them to be registered, as long as the supervisor is just verifying that the work the person claims to have done has been done by that individual. And then we'll handle the referees. So we can certainly get around the potential nepotism of Calvin and Trevor with respect to Mike. And then on the academic side, Phil, what I think the academics need to start doing is they know what their base qualifications are. They wouldn't be academics if they didn't minimally have either a BTech with a master's or a BEng or BSc with a master's, and in many cases even a PhD, like in Tebo as an example. So they must peg themselves, but remember, it's your base qualification. If you haven't got a BEng or a BSc-Eng, that's a 560 credit base qualification. Even if you've gone and got a PhD, you can't follow the PRN route, although E17P says you can. It's an onerous and an arduous journey. You must put the pig in the sand that you are going the PR Tech Eng route, and then look at the things that you've done, like has just been explained by our CPUT colleague, and look to see when I do something, where does it talk to the outcomes? Because that's what I think they're not connecting the dots at the moment. So Trevor gave an example of his work experience, and you carefully explained how he's got a track. When in that very first 2002 role, did he move from observing what others were doing to where he became more responsible? But he can't have become responsible in the first year of a 20-year journey. So it's the responsibility. I always use the acronym of whose backside gets kicked when something goes wrong. And if it's not you, you haven't reached a level E as yet.
Tom, yeah, I'm 100%. And I'm not sure with your travels, were you in from the beginning, or did you join after Fran gave her discussion on the academics?
I unfortunately missed Fran because I got kicked out of Whitby at about 15:35 and then couldn't connect to this meeting until I actually arrived at a hotel and could get on their Wi-Fi. So I missed Fran's bit. I'll have to listen to the recording.
It was very worthwhile, Tom. It was very, very worthwhile. Okay, so Mike, there's very elegant, and I'd actually forgotten about that. And thanks, Tom, just for reminding me. So that on projects, it is possible for someone who has a position of responsibility based on not necessarily their qualifications, but just on because the employer and the client and everyone's very happy with their responsibility, is that they can sign off verifying that the work was done. And that's just that the person's the supervisor on the project, whether it's a design project or well, they wouldn't be on a design project, but on a construction project. What comes in then is the referee point of view, and that's why some organizations even go to the point of having what's known as a C&U mentor, which is an agreement between the employer and EXA itself. So a company like AECOM, for instance, will recognize 5 engineers. They'll have a structures, they'll have a waters guy, they'll have a sort of a general civils guy, they might have electrical and a mechanical guy, and they are all registered engineers, and their names and their numbers are registered with EXA, and there's an agreement between EXA and AECOM, and that's called the C&U mentor. And on the TER itself, you will get the point where the supervisors sign off, the referees sign off, and if you have access to a C&U mentor, that's where they sign off. So someone like a Sanral may in fact have an agreement. Mike, I'm not sure if it's something at MTN it's worth looking at. Tom, you can advise on that at some point in time, getting into a contract with EXA, so that you have that commitment and undertaking agreement contract, because it just simplifies the thing, because you are then verified as an acceptable organization. You are running a mentoring program. EXA recognizes you for what you're doing, and probably cuts you a bit of slack, actually, because you've got that commitment to them. So Tom, thanks very much for that. That was appreciated. I'm not going to go through the whole Franciska thing, but Tom, just at a very high level, the positive feedback, and I was really, really happy that Fran joined us. The positive feedback from Fran, she gave us an overview of the draft document, and showing what the academic requests were and the current state of the discussion. She said, people asked if she could share it. She said she couldn't share it, but that she would share it once it had been ratified and it had gone through the different committees and to council, all the rest of it. And what she was saying is that EXA are very interested. They want to resolve the academic issue. They are open to feedback and discussions, identifying the kinds of work, the research, the publishing, the tuition, the learning, the curriculum development, all of the stuff that academics do, and how that could be evaluated for registration. But what Fran also said, which was important, Tom, for you and my meeting with her and Johan and Frederick and the rest, is that she is very, very positive towards changing the RO2 and the E17P document to be more accepting and more flexible for the QBE process. Essentially, she didn't use that acronym, but you and I use it. And that she recognizes is that it really is something that there are people out there like the MTM Nook one who've got years of experience, and they really need to be recognized for that. and how we do that. So Fran actually committed herself to working closely with you and I and the MTM Nook One on that process. So that was a win, and it was a really positive. If you don't get time to watch the video, that was the nuance that came out of Fran's discussion. So are there any other MTM Nook One people that, having seen what Trevor and Calvin have done, that are still stuck, or if you still don't know how to progress forward, can you just put your hand up quickly and we can just address you? Okay, there's no one there. Okay, so on the voters and the Emmas and the people that are doing it via the qualification route, you in many ways kind of almost fall into SAICI Nook One as well, because you're all doing it through that route kind of thing. Are there any questions from the, let's call it the traditional route, the base load qualification? Does anybody have any questions at the moment on writing, on getting your career written up? Because what I think we need to do next time, as Calvin and Trevor just alluded to now, is how do we now take your history and cross map that with the learning outcomes? And that will be where we get guided by, if you look at the learning outcomes, each one of you, you'll see you have the competency group descriptor, which is A, B, C, D, or E. You then have the learning outcome. This is X's language, and that will be from 1 to 11. And 11 is your data room of all the courses, conference, seminars, all the certificates, or all the things, the online webinars, anything that you've done that is in the line of work or is related to the line of work. Or, you know, understanding computers or data, etc., all of that, that's your data room that you want to keep there. And then what we're going to be doing, I think, with all of that stuff is we're going to be trying to split out the stuff that possibly fits into competency group A, which is the first 3 outcomes, which is all to do with the inception, feasibility, early analysis, concept design, all of that kind of stuff. We want to be able to bolster that side up, because it's always been the area. Even with traditional qualifications, it's always been the area that EXA has been anti, or has struggled with registering transport engineers or traffic engineers, because they've always viewed it as more of a monitoring process as opposed to blue sky thinking, innovation, problem solving, understanding the physics of the universe sort of kind of thing. And looking at what Trevor showed me the other night, you guys do that. There's no question that you do that. So we need to be able to write that up in that area. Pardon me. And then all the other areas, which is the outcomes B, outcomes 4 and 5, which is to do with communication, managing big projects, managing clients, multiple parties. Outcome 4, which is all to do with managing engineering projects. You guys do that. That's part of what you've been doing as a youngster right up to now. And we need to write that up in such a way that you really, you understand site management, you understand establishment, you understand safety, you understand the nuances that go with security and all of that sort of kind of stuff. You've got lots and lots of stuff that can be written up there. So the question is as to SAICI Nook One and to the traditional route guys from MTM Nook One, are there any questions on writing up your history so we can start to cross map your learning gaps? No questions there. Okay, and then are there any outstanding questions? I'm conscious of the time. Any outstanding questions? I think Fran did a good job. Cheryl, you've asked some questions, and I hope that we've been able to answer that there. So certainly, Cheryl, anybody that you can get that verifies, as Tom said, even if they're not a PRN, if they're a head of department and they would have gravitas in the eyes of EXA, that they were a responsible person de facto because of their role in your journey, that would be really good to get those HODs to sign off. And what I would urge all of you is, life has a terrible knack of people immigrating, falling foul of being sidewiped by a bloody taxi, or just going off the radar screen and going to fish. So anybody that you still know, especially if they're aging, get them to sign off stuff. Write up something that you've got them and get those signatures done as quickly as you possibly can. Tom and Mike, Tom, any closing comments from yourself? We've been going for nearly 2 hours now. Anything from yourself, Tom?
No, I'm good, thanks, Phil. I think they're making progress. It's just a question of knuckling down and putting something on paper. So, like they say in research, page a day. Don't write nothing, write something, even if it's gobbledygook, and then you can refine it afterwards.
Yeah, so and I think out of the, I think there's a very important process which every one of us will understand is that attention phase of the human brain. The whole idea behind that little career thing was just to get you to force your attention on a histogram of your life and capturing bits and pieces, and you can evolve in it. So I think anybody that's following along the lines of what Trevor and Calvin have done, really great. I love Calvin's with the tabs and the detail, because that's an essential data room asset that you have. If there's any struggle in a conversation and you just say to them, look, can I just actually show you in my data room what this actually looks like? And if the meeting's going well and you know you're managing yourself professionally and you've written your stuff up well, they will very often give you the benefit of the doubt, and then they can look under the bonnet with you, and then they can see the substantial amount of work that you're getting done there. So this whole data analysis, this making sense of your history is really important. The next part is, and I'm just looking at what Trevor did, and to a certain extent what Calvin did, I can already see a lot of cross mapping. So when you start to get, like Tom and I have, a sort of a heads up visor, which just knows the framework, you know, in our sleep kind of thing, you very quickly pick up that there's a safety nuance, there's a procurement nuance, there's a machine nuance, there's a site safety, there's a site managing thing, there's a design thing, there's an analysis thing. We can quickly put those and you can start to cross map that. So I think I've probably said enough. I want to just ask Michelle had to drop off, unfortunately, but I wanted to ask Mike Helens if you've got any final thoughts, Mike.
No, all good. Thanks, Phil. I think that things have been fairly well cleared up. I think that the pressing issue is the discussion with Franciska and EXA, you know, to ensure that the alternate route is still achievable. And that's obviously a pressing concern, and the sooner we can get answers on that, the better.
Yeah, absolutely. You can appreciate that we have no influence on the pace. All we can do is let me just try and turn this thing off. All we can do is keep them under pressure to do that. So as we are. But what I can say, and from her conversation today and the other conversations we have, is I think we are on the right side of uncertainty. I don't think we're on the wrong side of uncertainty. So what you're doing is I would say is not going to turn out to be a waste at all. I think this is an investment, and I think it will have the benefit. So as a positive person, I think the bank on the fact that we will engineer some way or other a positive outcome. It might not happen overnight, Mike. But that's beyond our control.
Thanks, Phil. Thanks for the session.
Okay, guys, if there aren't any more questions, quick, gone. Any last questions? Emma, anything from your side? Wouter, Henk?
All good, thank you, Phil.
All good.
No, thank you.
All good, Emma?
Mm-hmm.
All good your side?
Yep, all good, thanks.
Okay, all right. I'm really sorry about the technological glitch with the invite earlier on. As I said, Louise is in a really bad state with her husband in intensive care, and Celestine is getting over a family tragedy. But I think that the A team will be back on track next week, and we'll drop you some communications in the interim. But thanks all. Take care. Have a good evening. Cheers for now.
Thanks so much.
Cheers.
Cheers, everyone.
Thanks, guys. Cheers. Bye.
Bye.